Brave season is here, and it's time to get hype. And that means for the first time this season, let's get to some Braves talk. As the calendar turns to November, the Bradley Braves rise up to take the court and get ready for their 24-25 season. Welcome to Braves Talk, everybody. As always, it's the Iceman, Matt Freights, and across from me, the coach, Brad Powell, and the OG, Rick Powell. Gentlemen, welcome to the 2024-25 season.
Iceman, we are pumped. Got the OG in the house, ready to go, ready to get excited for some Bradley basketball. It's been a long off season. I think we intended to kind of like try to hang around a little bit, but everybody gets caught up in the activities of the summer and so on. And, but here we are. We're right on the eve of basketball season, Bradley basketball season, got the exhibition under our belts, and we're really looking forward to it. I know Dad's had a lot to say over the last few days. I'm sure he has been preparing very intensely, waiting for this moment.
Not as intense as you might think.
That is an absolute lie, and we're starting off the season the way we start off everything here at I&C, and that is completely full of crap. So, Rick, I know you've been watching, you've been in the bushes, you've been waiting for everything that is happening in Peoria around the Bradley Braves, and I know that you're stoked. But you know what? It's been so long since I've seen you. It is good to see your face, and so welcome back. Welcome back to the airwaves, my man. Welcome back to celebrity.
Thank you.
You are a local celebrity in Peoria, Illinois. So, gentlemen, it has been a long off season, and I would say it's been long in the sense that so much has happened for this team. And I think last year we ended on what could be seen as a sour note with an NIT that didn't go as planned. Obviously lost a lot of people in the offseason. We're going to get to that. But I think it is important that we start off with something exciting. And I think we want to look at the commits that we're looking at for 2025 because there is some local flair to that. So, Brad, do you kind of want to dive into some of that for us?
Yeah, we've got 3 guys in the 2025 class that'll be coming in next season. And 2 of the 3 are local guys. And I'll let OG kind of expand upon them briefly here in a moment. But we have Matthew Zobrist from Metamora, whose dad everyone remembers well. Aaron Zobrist, who played in the mid-'90s, was on the NCAA team that lost to Stanford back then and was, a part of a Valley regular season championship team. We have Montana Wheeler from Xavier Academy in Texas. And then the most recent one, Dietrich Richardson from Peoria Manual. And so, there's a lot of excitement going on right now around the program, and especially once you start plugging some of these local guys in. I mean, the last time Bradley had a real heavy local presence on their team, they went to the Sweet 16. And so there's a lot to be excited about there. It gets the community excited. And I think Dad can tell us maybe a smidge about each of these guys.
I haven't done a whole lot of, looking into them outside. We know Zoe and Richardson. I haven't really seen a lot of his play. I do know he's a 4-star. Many people look at him as a 4-star. He's recruited by some big-time schools. He elected to stay home. Awesome for us. Matt Zobrist, he's going to be our sharpshooter. He's
much like his father was, right?
Just like his dad was. May even shoot a little bit better. If you can believe that. And I do. Seen him shoot around in some Metamora games, watching state tournaments and such. The Montana Wheeler kid, and in my research of him, I've seen some video clips of him. For a little guy, he's going to be very good, takes care of the ball, dishes it out. He's a scorer. Recently, he scored 44 against the team down there. His dad's a coach. They transferred from a school that they were at last year to Xavier Academy down there in Houston, Texas. And his dad's the coach. So, he's got a, coach's mentality within the kid. The kid's very smart, wise, basketball. And he was actually on a PN 4-star list. So if you want to look at it, hey, we're going to have 2 4-stars. If you get into the, that sort of thing in evaluating kids, the more the stars, the better. You go up to 5. And, so I think in the next few years, our guard play at Bradley is phenomenal.
Well, and we know that Brian Wardle loves his little point guards, right? And, small guys. But I think that there's value to be had there because we mentioned it last year. You and I talked about it at games. But if Darryl Brown was 3 inches taller, if Duke Dean was 3 inches taller, like these guys likely wouldn't be at Bradley. I mean, that's just the truth. And so, but here they are, and lucky us to be able to have these guys and to be able to keep kind of passing the torch down, right? We've got Jaquan Johnson who kind of fits that same mold, and then moving on to Montana Wheeler coming in. And so if we can just establish that pipeline of these undersized but like ultra competitive natural leaders at the point guard position, I think that's fantastic. And of course, being a coach's kid, there's a lot to be said for that. I think that they kind of see the game in a little different way. And, I think, what's his face? Connor Hickman was a coach's kid, right?
We forgot about him already.
Connor Hickman. No, I have not. Connor Hickman, though, was a coach's kid, I believe, as well.
Yes.
But
I was actually going to say, Brad, that last year, I think I was going back and listening to some stuff, and you had said that about him, about where the team was at, because they went through a pretty lengthy slide last year, and having a coach's kid being able to sort of translate the way that Wardle coaches and sort of the intensity that he brings, and being able to kind of say to the players, especially ones that maybe aren't used to that kind of coaching, and say like, hey, it's good, we just kind of move on. And there is a natural translation that takes place with a guy who has been coached or is used to being coached in a certain way and can then sort of, I don't want to say be a glue guy, because it's not really what you're talking about, right? He's contributing in a lot of other ways, but there is sort of a correlation to our first episode last year or last season and then what you just said. So I think that's a nice full circle moment for us.
Yeah, a coach's kid, you can usually coach a coach's kid hard, right? Because you're never going to coach them as hard as their father coached them, most likely. And so I think that, Wardle likes kids that he can coach hard. And those are the kids that I think thrive in this program, to be honest with you. So there's a ton to be excited about. And speaking about people who thrive within this program, there was a few guys that got some pretty serious preseason accolades coming into this year. And, I think we start right off the top. Duke Dean picked preseason player of the year at Valley Media Day. And Darius Hannah also found himself on the first team, and Zeke Montgomery got a second team spot. So 3 guys on the first and second team, which is great, followed up by a preseason number 1 pick to finish number 1 in the league, preseason favorite. And I know that, just to kind of round that out real quick, the coaches and writers around the Valley picked Bradley 1, Northern Iowa 2, Murray State 3, Illinois State 4. We will kind of evolve here into the OG's preseason outlook. I don't think it varies much from that, but I do think we could all agree that beyond those top 4, there are a lot of question marks throughout the next 8 teams in the Valley.
Well, I was actually going to say, if you guys recall, last year after the season was over, there was a lot of chaos. I think we did an episode called like Chaos in the Valley or something like that, because so many coaches left. You had obviously a bunch of guys that were transferring to different schools, West Virginia, St. Louis, what have you. And so Bradley was kind of the most consistent program that sort of stayed where they were. And yes, of course, there was some attrition, but I think that consistency is really helpful in what was kind of a chaotic offseason for the Valley in a lot of respects.
Yeah, and not to take anything away from the Braves, because I think that they are poised to make a championship run. But yeah, I think that part of the selection as the number 1 team is almost by default, just because they return the most guys. They had the most. Thing. Yeah, right. They're the most guys stuck around. They had the coaching staff's intact. And so and we'll kind of talk more about, they lost some key pieces. Let's not forget about that. And there's a lot of, there's still some question marks as far as who's going to fill those voids. But this team is talented. This team is capable of winning a Valley title, and they're deserving of that prediction. And I think but that's all it is, right? Is a prediction. And I kind of skated through the personal accolades, because I bet you those 3 guys, they couldn't care less. That all they're worried about is where they finish in March. And, if Duke Dean ends up being the player of the year down in St. Louis at Arch Madness, that's a totally different story. And, if Bradley walks out of there, Arch Madness champs. What's that?
Still got to win the tournament to go to the dance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you don't get in based off the preseason predictions alone. But Dad, I want to kind of evolve into kind of your outlook right now of the league and how you see things shaking out, especially at the top. And if you want to kind of cherry pick a few teams from further down who you think could maybe threaten or who you think people are overvaluing, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll just say my opinion, my own personal opinion. Stability within a program is tons. Means a ton of difference. Makes a ton of difference. I don't care what you did at another school in a different league, Drake fans, if any's listening, and I doubt it. But, even SIU, these teams that have got a completely new coaching staff, completely new teams player-wise, with the exception maybe a player or two who, in I think most cases, have been, are deep bench players from last year, those that are returning. And with that said, I've got Bradley, obviously, number one. Still got to play the games, though. So, Braves fans and players, let's get it going.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Coach.
Two, I've got Murray State. Because I think they've lost less than what Northern Iowa did. But I do look both Northern Iowa and Murray State, they could flip-flop. In fact, 2 to 3 or 2 to 4, anyone, actually 1 to 4, anywhere in there, it could be any one of these 4 teams. But I've got Bradley, Murray State, Northern Iowa, and then Illinois State. Much to the chagrin of many people who's got Drake up there.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like they're in the top 4, with the exception of Belmont. The top 4 are the 4 schools that have the most continuity at the head coach position and within the staff, right?
Yeah, but there's still a few other schools that's got some continuity, but they're a little bit less talented. They got a few good players, and that's Valparaiso and Evansville.
And one thing I think before you move on is I think it's very important that early in the season, when Bradley gets a shot at some of the SIUs of the world, the Drakes of the world, Missouri States of the world, I think these are programs that are going to figure it out and they're going to improve as the season goes on. So like, you have got to capitalize when you catch these guys early in the season. You cannot have an off night those nights. Like, those are games you got to win, because the next time you see them down the road, that could be a different looking ball club. Yeah. And I hope that's the case for the Valley, because the Valley is going to be better if all these other teams improve and are competitive.
Kwanzaa Mark today, if they're the 11th best team in the league, Valley's going to have a historic season.
Rick, when you talk about the continuity part, like, it's one thing to lose players. And I think that's an attrition that college programs all over the country are facing in basketball, football, all that stuff. But I think when you look at the loss of a coach, you're talking about an entire ecosystem that leaves. And for some schools, it's an established ecosystem. I mean, if Brian Wardle, God forbid, were to actually leave Bradley, we're talking about a decade or more's worth of culture and continuity. There's so many things that leave. And so when you're trying to turn over all of that to somebody who's not necessarily unproven, but somewhat unproven at this level, perhaps, it's not an easy thing to get to success in year one. And so I kind of agree with you in terms of assessing, like, on paper, the teams that are returning at least a head coach with new players, you're keeping that culture, you're keeping that continuity, the playbook. Yep. But when you're turning over everything, I do think it is difficult. Brad, I don't know if you agree with that, but like, when I look at the Drakes of the world, they went to the highest of highs, right? Indiana State, highest of highs. And now you're trying to start completely over, and it's hard.
Let me go into this a little bit, because Coach Wardle, I believe it was during his coaches show last Monday, kind of brought up, when you bring in kids, okay, especially, like new kids like a Bradley, the players have to want to play for their teammates, right? Okay, so part of coming into an experienced team, like for Bradley's new guys coming in, they've got to get the acceptance of a Duke Dean, a Darius Hannah, a Christian Davis. You get my point?
Yeah, you've got to have the trust of the leaders on the team, especially when you have the culture that Bradley's developed over the last decade.
Now, when you're bringing in 10, 12 new guys that's never played together, they're not going to get it in 2 months, 3 months. They might get the offensive system, the defensive system, but learning to play together, it takes a while. They'll improve as the year goes on, but for them to gel like a family, like Bradley has over the years, have gotten that chemistry with a team.
It took Shirts a few years, a couple years, I should say, to get it going at Indiana State. But like, also, there were, everybody saw the writing on the wall pretty early that like there was something
They were going to
brewing
be
there.
good.
Yeah. But I mean, and also he didn't take over. Indiana State wasn't a complete dumpster fire. I mean, Lansing had that program.
Yeah.
They yo-yoed up and down, but I mean, they
won 11 games his first year. Total.
Yeah.
4 in the Valley.
Right. You're talking about with shirts, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, and that was taking over a program that wasn't completely in the gutter. Drake's not in the gutter. No. I wouldn't say SIU's in the gutter. Granted, their roster got decimated. But Missouri State might be, gutter adjacent at least.
Well, they got a lot of new players down there too.
Right. I mean, but they had the familiarity of Kwanzaa Martin returning. I mean, there's a couple things there that maybe will speed the process up.
Well, and it's not so much that the university itself is, knows Kwanzaa Martin. It's the players.
Sure. No.
That, has to know him and his system and get used to it. They have, exhibition is exhibition. You just learn a little bit, but there needs to be a degree, which we saw it. We saw it Wednesday, with the starting 5 that we had. I mean, it came out and that wasn't without, that was without, our best inside guy.
I mean, that's actually a good segue because you talked about newcomers, and obviously the Braves have newcomers. They have some returners, and we did lose some things. So I think this is a good time to kind of talk about, before we get into the exhibition and kind of previewing the games that they got coming up, let's take a look at the roster, right? And I don't know which one of you guys wants to take it. I know, Rick, you didn't pay attention at all this offseason, so I'm not sure if you're prepared to do this.
So we were talking about the roster a little bit. You were talking about the starting lineup, Dad, how you projected it correctly. I said I didn't anticipate Corey Thomas getting the start because Wardle seems like the type of guy that maybe values or favors, guys he knows and trusts. But I think there's a lot to like in Corey Thomas. I like that he does the little things. He doesn't seem to be a me guy, which is good. I think he's a good character fit. That's a positive thing. I think we talked about Corey Dillon. My back compared to his back, I imagine it's a bit of a struggle to recover from something like that. Hopefully, he's able to come along and evolve into a contributor, a guy that can come off the bench, knock down some big threes. He shot nearly 40% or something like that at Winona State?
Something like that, right around 39.
Okay.
Just shy of 40.
Better than me, which is a good thing. And, obviously we talked last spring after the season was over about Zeke returning from Rhode Island. We have him as well. And then as I'm running out of breath, I encourage you, Dad, to jump in. I'm
enjoying watching you struggle.
Talk about some of the other additions to the roster and kind of where you think they fit. I know you really like Jaquan Johnson, what he brings to the table, and I do think there might be a struggle at times for him to find minutes, especially if the guards are playing well. But with Zeke and Duke and even Damarian Birch, but I do think there's a role for him, especially if he can prove that when he's on the floor, he's able to get things done.
Let's start out with something that should, I think right now, with everybody's being given. What are we looking at as the starting 5? And I'm looking at Duke, Zeke, Christian Davis, Almar, and Darius. Once he gets his knee healthy, in absence of Darius, it's going to be Corey Thomas. So then what are you looking at when you're subbing in? You just can't say, I'm the first guy off the bench. Well, you're not going to bring Bully in, or let's go. You're not going to bring Birch in for Allison per se, and you're gonna substitute by the need that you're wanting to bring a player in, give a player, a blow, so on, and your opponent. There's going to be some opponents that we have to have Meta in there because of the size of some of the guys that's playing down low.
Right, and we'll talk more about SEMO later, but you anticipate that SEMO might be one of those teams, right? With some of their big bodies.
More so Washington State, but yeah. Well, see, SEMO's got 3 7-footers. They're not going to play all 3 of them at the same time.
Wouldn't that be something?
They possibly could, but 2 of them, there's 2 definitely that you're not going to play at the same time. And they're the 2 bigger ones, as far as weight wise, because you got, I don't know if you want to go into SEMO stuff right yet.
No, not really. But you're basically saying some of this is going to be matchup dependent.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And I think that more about what Bradley's going to do to fill the void left by specifically Malavi Leons. And as I notice now, the internet's getting goofy.
Okay,
Hopefully we hang in here, though.
So real quick.
So yeah,
my answer to that right now is the closest person you have statistic-wise is Darius. As far as blocks and steals, he was less than 10 in each category of those two categories, behind Malvi.
but he's also not a guy. I don't know if we have this guy on the roster, but he's not a guard 1 through 5 guy. I mean, and those are rare, right?
Right. But I mean, a lot of Mal's blocks weren't out on the circle either.
Sure.
Know?
So I want to say this, and based off what I saw the other night a little bit and what we've seen in the past, there's one guy who I think could be like the defensive X factor on this team, but my interpretation is that he's got a wannabe, and that's Zeke.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I think that Zeke has the skill set to be a serious problem on the defensive end, but defense is such and this is not an indictment on Zeke, but defense is such a want-to thing, and I think that he's going to be relied on so heavily on the offensive end at times that it is tough to. I mean, I'm sure in Wardle, everybody would love players. You're getting their best effort on both ends of the floor, but unfortunately, human nature, that's not always the case. And I think that I don't think Zeke loves defense, right? That's just my interpretation.
He's getting better.
Yeah. Well, I think after he got taken out, Wardle called the timeout early in the second half, pulled him. And when he went back in the game and we started pressing there a little bit, he definitely was playing in another gear and playing with better effort. And if he can do that, sustain that throughout a game, I mean, that's going to be huge.
Right. No, I think statistically, after Darius, the better defender is Christian Davis, although he wasn't showing that Wednesday.
Christian didn't have his best night, but you know what I like about Christian is that even though his shots were falling, maybe he didn't quit playing hard. He didn't quit giving great effort, and really I thought that was the case across the board. Now I do think that I want to say it was getting late in the first half, and we went our big run early. Held him to 2 points for the first forever, and there was a stretch though, and I remember I turned around to Kevin behind us, and I was like, we looked like we're a little gassed. I felt we looked a little sluggish, and I think that Milliken did too a little bit, but there was definitely a stretch of time where I'm like, man, we look tired, and that's to be expected this early. These guys, they're in great shape, I'm sure, but they're still not. They're in mid-season form. They've been practicing hard. Also, it's different going out there playing a full game against another opponent, and that takes a lot out of you mentally, which people underestimate how much that takes a toll on you physically. And so it was kind of maybe good to work through some of those things.
Hey, it's good to have a little adversity in a exhibition game.
And you know what? I was thinking that at times, although it was frustrating as fans, and I'm sure it was frustrating for the coaching staff, but there were moments where we were struggling, and I'm thinking to myself, I bet you Wardle loves this. Yeah. He loves that we're facing this adversity and these coachable moments where he's able to teach a lesson. And that's good though. I mean, because I don't know that we would have learned anything and we come out and everybody wanted to go out and blow the doors off them and beat them by 40, which would have been wonderful. But I don't know that you learn anything.
Like the guy in front of us. We should be beating these guys by 30.
Okay, that was funny. So let's talk about it for a minute. Funny. And whatever. I am not a basketball guru, X's and O's guy. I just love Bradley, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. I imagine most of us fall in that same category. But there is this it was an older gentleman, even older than the OG, or maybe close. I don't know.
Well, he had good sound basketball thought what he was wanting to see.
He wanted to see a 1992 offense where, Patrick Ewing is posting up on the block and we're, forcing the ball inside. And it's just, I don't know that we got the roster for that. Meta, but I don't know that we're cut out to play that type of game.
We weren't setting it up to kick that inside so much.
And even late in the game when we were, we're cruising a little bit and obviously we're playing different combinations of guys working on different things. And this guy just could not get over it, man. He's just hammering, we need to force the ball inside. And if you're in here, man, in the chat, whatever, hey, I applaud your passion and your excitement.
Well, I enjoyed it because, that's what being a Bradley basketball fan is all about. You got to come, you enjoy it. You want to see these guys, doing the things like that to get it in. Maybe it wasn't the time, but, I was looking at, it is just an exhibition. And we are running the guys that were on the floor at one of the particular times was two of the freshmen, one new guy, another new guy, a transfer.
There's definitely some weird combinations.
Oh, there was definitely some combinations that we do not want to see once we start the regular season.
Well, but the thing is, you never know where potential unfortunate injuries will lead you or foul trouble.
Right.
And I think it's nice to at least maybe have a few minutes under your belt in those scenarios.
Yep.
Like, hey, we've done this before. We'll figure it out. But I think there's a lot to like about the roster. We talked a little bit about how we could try to replace what was lost defensively. We didn't even mention Hickman. I mean, obviously Hick was a great on-ball defender. Him and Mal, kind of consensus best two defenders on the team. And, definitely going to be difficult to replace. Hopefully Zeke can pick up some of the slack there, and Christian Davis can elevate his game. And I think that Darius is going to be Darius, right?
Yep. I got to go back to, the original question is who's going to replace, especially Malachi. It's not going to be one guy. It's going to be, our defense is going to become way more of a team effort. So it's not going to be just one guy that can come in and replace him, fill his shoes.
Well, I think great defense is a team thing.
Yeah, but when you got 2, 3 really, let's just say 2 really good defenders, like as in Mal but you got some that are close. Everybody needs to, level up, and some of the new guys.
Get an earthquake going on over there.
Yeah, no, I just
leave that
saw
table
that.
alone. You're just shaking.
But then, hey, I'm going to take blame for jinxing Zeke.
You did, man.
I zinked
all
him
your fault.
big time.
You zinked him. That's a
he came out and offensively he was just lightening up on fire, and then
you had to turn and say, I don't think he's missed yet.
I haven't seen him miss yet, have you?
And then he didn't make another basket.
I think he missed all but maybe one after that. And I'm like, I'll keep my mouth shut.
Is that a promise?
Yeah. Well,
just trying to find out. I mean,
hey, I do have to say something different was in attendance at the game Wednesday night. 3 officials, all 3 had hair.
That is not something you see very often. That was a good observation. You certainly don't see 3 officials with hair at the same time on the same floor. So definitely a unique occurrence. But let's kind of let's buzz through the non-conference schedule a little bit, and then we'll get into. Obviously we get in a little bit about the exhibition again, if you want. There's anything we missed, and then we'll talk a little bit about SEMO and how things look. But, there's some people that aren't too high on the non-conference schedule, and there's not a lot that's going to jump off the page at you if you're just looking at it on paper. And even right now, admittedly, if you look at the KenPom rankings, there's not a lot that impresses, but I think that there are some teams that could have some value as the season goes on. And Dad, I'll let you take over here in a minute and kind of talk about how you think some of these teams are being undervalued in the preseason rankings, if you will. But obviously the big one that's coming up here, we go on the road to Pullman to take on Washington State. That's going to be a big game, but that's another team that sounds like their roster was kind of decimated a little bit, right? And also a head coaching change, correct?
Yep. I haven't gone through completely, totally.
Sure.
But it's kind of similar to Drake, except on a D1 level.
Well, Drake's plays D1. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Well, my point is
they're Division I basketball team.
A D2 coach went into Drake.
Understood.
Several D2 players. In this case, it's a former Eastern Washington coach with I think at least 4 followed him to Washington State, and 3 of them are very good. So as far as a coaching system,
so kind of one of those teams that you'd hope that, I would imagine being I know they left the Pac-12 and they're kind of on an island right now, but being a Pac-5 adjacent program that, you would imagine that the talent they're able to pull in there could be at a high level. And you hope that's a game we can go win and that they end up having a great season and progress as the season goes on. San Francisco, that's one that I think is intriguing for sure. I think they might actually, are they the highest preseason, or was it Washington State?
No, the highest preseason, like KenPom ranking? No, that falls to Princeton.
Okay, so see, we don't know what we're talking about here either. So I'm like the guy that was sitting in front of us. I don't know shit. So San Francisco, that's another one though that I think could end up showing some value as the season goes on.
84.
Who's that?
San Francisco.
Okay, there you go. And then Santa Clara is another one I think that could turn out to be a nice one to get. And then when we go to Myrtle Beach, opportunities to play, hopefully Princeton and South Florida would be ideal for us net-wise.
Yeah.
And, of course, all this is contingent on winning these games, right? I don't there's only a couple games here that you could maybe get away with losing and it not completely destroy your ranking. And, of course, that's also contingent on those teams holding up their end of the bargain. But, you definitely, with the schedule that exists this year, you can't lose to a SEMO. You can't lose to a Canisius. You can't lose to a UTSA. I mean, we cannot squander any of those games.
Yep.
And is there anything on the non-conference schedule that sticks out to you that you think that people are underestimating the quality of the opponent, or one that maybe people are overvaluing slightly?
Months ago or within the last couple of months, I know there'd been several people, on the boards, really, I guess they described the Myrtle Beach tournament as a dog shit field. Well, not with the team.
There's not a lot of name recognition. That's fair. I mean, the casual fans are looking at it and be like, that tournament sucks.
Right. When you look at the teams that we most likely have the opportunity to meet, I mean, we got the Texas State game's our first game. Then after that, it's going to be the winner of the Princeton. Is it right?
Hopefully it's Princeton. All right. Let's just pretend it
should be Princeton. Okay. So we'll meet them the second day. And then South Florida should, now, even though they just recently lost their head coach, may he rest in peace. They did.
Very polite of you.
Well,
for sure. Yeah, of course. I'm not trying to. It's just I didn't see that coming. You kind of caught me off guard.
Well, I mean, it's kind of an unfortunate incident with the team, but I mean, and teams can do many different things from a mental side of this. They could either cower back or they could push forward. And South Florida last year was an outstanding team under that first year coach. They went into the NIT and gave some people a little bit of trouble, but they could come back. I know they lost a few people from last year's team, but they also gained a few very good players.
So there's opportunity, right? Yeah. If we take care of business, there's opportunity. Yeah. Well, and let's just face it, if we win them all, it ain't going to matter, right?
Yeah, Ken Palm has them ranked 102. They have us at 92, South Florida at 102, Princeton at 74. So we can go in there and come out of there looking pretty if we can go in there and play Bradley basketball.
Yeah, and that's just it. I think that if we do that, if we play Bradley basketball and play to our potential, that this is a non-conference slate that we should run through, right? Yep. And it's don't get me wrong, it's probably a little naive to expect that that there's not going to be a loss that pops up in there, and that's just the way those are the breaks, right? You have a bad night, things don't go your way, maybe a battle, injury, illness, whatever the case. So, but that being said, this team has the tools necessary to get it done. Mm-hmm. Now, also though, there's a lot of things I think that need to probably get be improved upon and fall into place. Obviously, getting Darius back is a big part of that.
Right.
I heard you mention earlier, maybe before one of the times we cut off, maybe when we first came back on, I don't remember. But, are we going to see him Monday night? Maybe a little. Is he going to dress and maybe just go out there and get a little run to kind of blow the cobwebs out a little bit before we go out and watch his healthy?
I would like to see him at least play some minutes.
Or maybe he just goes out and warms up and goes through the motions. Who knows? I have no idea.
But because, coach and the training staff, they obviously know best. But from a fan standpoint, wanting to see, what's he gonna bring us for next Friday? Because Friday night's not a slouch. On the road at Washington State, they're ranked 111 in the KenPom. No other Valley school is ranked as high as they are. In fact, them 5 teams we mentioned: Washington State, San Fran, Santa Clara, Princeton, South Florida. They're all KenPom ranked higher than the next Missouri Valley team.
Okay,
which is Murray State at 113.
All right, so that's it. I mean, there's some mixed opinions out there for sure about the non-conference schedule, and I don't think that anyone's necessarily wrong. It's one of those things that we'll see how it shakes out.
I think
it could break either way, honestly.
And I think, maybe rightfully so, but I know Bradley fans want good teams to come to the Civic Center. which is very hard to do. Some of these teams were playing Washington State, Santa Clara. They're on the road. The Princeton and possibly South Florida. They're at a neutral court on the road. They're not in the Civic
but you're going to get Washington State back next year. They're going to come back. They're kind of Peoria. So, so you're going to get some of these back. And I think what we have to do, and I don't want to belabor the point because we talked about it a lot last season, but you have to keep improving and become good enough to not be a bad loss. Right. And I think realistically, we're probably a little ways from being that for some of these power schools. But, we're kind of still in that little bit of a danger zone where we're good enough to beat you, but not good enough that it's a good loss. And as we continue to improve, hopefully build the roster, build the culture. I mean, we're moving in the right direction.
I tell you what, you asked me what the transfer portal way is going is the parity throughout all of college basketball is going to be such that, even the big guys.
Well, we're seeing it in college football too. And what that is you've got star players, good players who aren't willing to go sit on the bench at one of the big boys when they can go start and play right away other places. Because you can go start at a group of 5 school in football or whatever, a mid-major in basketball, go start, have a great year, and then still get picked up by one of the big boys in the transfer portal. Right. And unfortunately, that's just the way it works. But the fun part is you could get some really talented players playing for some of these mid-major programs, be it for only a year or two.
Slowly what's happening, I think.
It's going to make for some fun seasons and some exciting underdog stories come NCAA tournament time when you have some of these teams that get hot and go on a run with great talent that is Power 5 talent, but just they don't want to sit on the bench at Duke, and so they're at Davidson or somewhere like that.
Yep.
So
what's next?
So we're going to move on a little bit. Is there anything about the exhibition that you want to talk about anymore? We kind of already hashed it out when we first came back on, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they shot, they came out and they made a bunch of threes, but as Coach said on the postgame show, that's what you get in these games. Those guys have nothing to lose. They're going to come out and just chuck them up. We've seen it several times. You'd prefer it not happen, but it's just the way it goes. Yeah. I don't really take anything from it negatively.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a lot of them shots that they were throwing up, they being Milliken, they were throwing up. Some of them were, I mean, for most part, I mean, they had guys flying at them.
Sure.
So they weren't necessarily uncontested shots.
As a coach, I've never coached basketball, I've coached other things. As a coach, so like I said, I think Wardle, you kind of like it a little bit because it's going to be really easy to keep your team engaged, between then and the first game, because you got plenty of stuff you can point at the film and say, guys, this has got to be better. Right. We got to work on this. We got to work on that. So on and so forth. Milliken shot whatever they did from 3, so we got to be better there. Yeah. And I think that those are things.
Yeah. And see, it's just like, because for those who don't know, we're big Notre Dame football fans, and we listen to Irish Breakdown a lot and follow a lot of what they call on a Sunday night or a Monday, Beyond, what do they call it? Got a brain fart.
It's upon further review. Yeah, basically, they go back and watch the film.
They watch
break
the
game
22.
Down in reality.
The coaches see stuff, slow down, watching film, and they see stuff that we as general fans sitting up the stands or in our living rooms watching on TV, they see all the stuff that technically needs to be worked on a lot more than some of us do. And
we'll see. We would all be willing to give our opinions if asked, though, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll all see something to think it's just terrible, and then end up when you do hear a coach talking about it, he says, actually, that person was actually in a good spot, good position for, whichever. And that's not necessarily just, in Bradley case, it's for, any team, So it's just, I mean, what we see with our naked eye at real speed can be different than what is shown on film.
Right. So let's move on. SEMO. SEMO's coming to town Monday night to take on the Braves, the home opener, the season opener. Hope to see a great crowd. There was a pretty good crowd at the exhibition. I don't think I've seen a crowd that big.
I haven't seen a crowd.
I mean, it wasn't whatever, but I mean, for an exhibition, I haven't seen a crowd like that in a while. Yep. There seemed to be some excitement.
They seem to be engaged.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. And hopefully, we expand upon that Monday night with a better crowd. But I got a couple just bullet point questions for you about SEMO, and we joked offline about this, but I've said that I really, really do sincerely trust your opinion of Bradley's opponents, and because you watch these guys, you watch games, you study these guys more so than most people do. You don't just look at a stat sheet. I trust your opinion of Bradley's opponents way more than I trust your opinion of Bradley, because your opinion of Bradley is so clouded in emotion, which is fine, right? It should be. You're a fan. You're a passionate fan. We all are. But when you look at their opponents, you look at it just completely objectively and see it for what it is. And for that reason, I do think that you usually give pretty good analysis on their opponents. So tell me what you think about SEMO. I know you haven't dove deep on him, but I know you got a little bit of info. So start right off the top. Give me key players.
Okay, key players. Well, first thing I want to tell you is, they've got they got like 7 transfers, a freshman. So, they've got, a good number of 10, but they still have the same coach. But I'm going to say 3 key players is a guard. I think their leader, Rob Martin. He's an 11, almost 12 points a game, 3.5 assists, shoots 39% from 3. We got, and he's 5'10", got a 6'5" guard, Braxton Stacker. We're going to have to keep an eye on him, because if we don't have a guy, someone on him, following him around, the guy will backdoor you big time. So we need to keep an eye on him. And then they got a 7-foot, their 7-foot center, 265 pounds, David Adada. He doesn't score much. Meta's got a better line than him. 2 points a game on 10 minutes of playing time per game. This is last year's stats, and 3 rebounds a game. I saw some film on him. He's a big guy, but he's more of a defensive guy in there. He'll disrupt down low. Those are 3 key players. With transfers, it's kind of hard. There's a couple possible 3-point guys coming in. They got one of the 3 7-footers is the transfer from John Logan College down south. And one thing to note, and I had to go back and look because I saw this, and but he averaged 7.5 points a game, but he had 105 blocks. And I had to look, is that for just last year, or was that his 2 years at John Logan? And it appears it was last year, just 105 blocks. And if you want something to compare that to, Malavi had 55?
Wow.
Something like that.
So obviously, they got 3 big dudes you mentioned earlier, 3 7-footers. Obviously, right. You can't play them all at the same time. I encourage them to do so, though, because it'd be hilarious. I think it'd just be wonderful. So obviously, there's an issue there to contend with, because we have one, but other than that, we don't have the most size in the world, I don't think, on our front line. And then a couple guards to keep an eye on, and some things we're gonna have to make sure we're aware of defensively. What would you say are some team strengths?
For them, it's going to be their guard play and 3-point shooting. I'm not sure exactly what they shoot, but, as far as percentage-wise, but teams past, they have relied a lot on their 3-point shooting. They try and get it in. Maybe that's why they brought in the guy from John Logan. He's a thinner guy. He's only comes in at 220, so he can move a little bit better. But with that, just the guard play.
Sure. Okay. And I think that, that good for us, right? Because our guards I think we've got very talented guards. And then you mentioned their 3-point shooting. I think that after what happened in the exhibition, we've probably spent a lot of time at defending the 3 and running guys off the 3-point line. So those are 2 things I feel good about going into this game that we'll be prepared for. How about weaknesses that we can exploit?
I would say, because once their size, after you get past the 7-footers, obviously, they're not all 3 going to play, but their next tallest guy is 6'7", and I think we're a little more athletic than them, a little quicker. They can be quick, but I think our length can really hurt them, depending on who we all play, have on the floor. But that's going to be their weakness, is small.
Okay, so they're small. You say length, but they're small, so that's a little contradictory. Our length, sorry.
Yeah, because they're small, our length is going to hurt them. Like I said,
you said they have 3 7-footers, and you said they're small. Which one is it?
Well, they got 3 7-footers, but they're not going to play 3 7-footers all at the same time. Although you did say it'd be hilarious.
Would be great. So maybe we just put 2 guards. Maybe like Damarian Birch can put Duke on his shoulders, and then
we just can't. We can't have Bully's getting any time. We can't have 2 7-footers in there. We can't have him driving, trying to put a shot up.
One thing I think that it's going to be critical for us is our bigs are going to have to stay out of foul trouble. Not just in this game, but that's just got to be a key for the season.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
I mean, between Darius, Meta, even Almar, and Corey Thomas, I mean, we cannot get in the foul trouble. Now, that being said, we got kind of like an ace up our sleeve a little bit, because Connor Linke played a lot of ball down the stretch last season, and he's sitting there ready to come in any point in time. And you just talk about reliable and just he's going to be sound. He's one of those guys. He maybe isn't going to win the game for you, but he's certainly sure as hell not going to lose the game for you,
right?
Because he's going to do what he's supposed to, and he's going to know what's going on and give great effort. And hopefully, one thing I'm going to be looking for in the game, Coach talked on the post game show about getting more vocal leadership on the floor when Duke's not in there. Now, I think part of that, obviously, you don't have Darius either, which doesn't help. But to see if some of these other guys step up and get a little bit more vocal and show some leadership skills. And really, you don't want to see it necessarily be a Zeke or even CD. You'd hope that you maybe start seeing like a Demarion Birch be one of those types of guys.
I think
or even Almar, or one of these younger guys assert themselves a little bit and kind of take the reins when Duke and Darius aren't on the floor.
Right.
Wonderful. Thank you for elaborating. So I'm happy we were able to.
Well, there's another leader that a lot of people, maybe.
You're gonna say Cade, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, and that's just it. And
I don't think he's necessarily going to hurt.
No, I would agree with that. Yes, I would put him and Connor in the same boat. Guys you can trust. They're not going to lose the game for you. They're going to make the right decisions. They're going to be where they're supposed to be. And those are really important things. I mean, there are very talented guys out there that you can't trust to do those things. And so, that's huge. And the guys they have, I mean, my goodness, the amount of experience those two guys have in this program is off the charts collectively. Mm-hmm. And, that's got to be invaluable to the coaching staff, I imagine. And so good for them. Well, and then those guys are going to help us this year. I mean, they're just not going to sit on the bench and wave their towel around their heads. Those guys are going to help us.
One of the things that I got out of the red-white game. Now, maybe, I'm not going to bet the farm on it, and I hope people might get a little bit what I'm saying. But what I took out of the red-white game was there wasn't a player that played that day that didn't show me the effort, their own personal abilities, what their liabilities may be. But there wasn't a player there that showed me they can be distrusted at any time on the court, depending on who they're playing with. You understand what I'm saying? I would not be afraid to bring any player off that bench and put in the game if needed to, as long as they're also playing with, obviously better players. Wouldn't hesitate to put Gonar in there for a few minutes if we needed and couldn't get Meta in there. Had to sit Darius or Almar.
What I love about Gonar is you put him in there, he's just gonna let fly. You know what I mean? He's gonna let fly. I love it.
He's got a three.
I know, but I mean, he's gonna go in there and play hard, and you love that because a lot of times you see maybe guys who don't play a whole bunch, they get in and they're real tense and they're kind of you can tell they don't play a lot and they're not real sure how to move on the floor. And
the other players,
he just goes for it.
Rugard. I wouldn't hesitate to put him in there. I mean, if you look at what he did at Morton, in high school, I mean, he's a very good sound player. He can come in and give you some minutes, and maybe there's a learning curve. Obviously, he's a freshman, but a lot of people, I think, get that stigma of a scholarship player versus a walk-on.
I mean, let's be honest. In most cases, that's a fair stigma. So
I'm not really.
You see, this is what I'm saying. And this is what I was saying earlier. When it comes to your evaluation of Bradley, I take it with a grain of salt because you just love all these guys, and that's great. We all do, but to the point that you're not able to look at it objectively at all.
Well, with Gus, I mean, I've looked at his stat line from last year at Morton. I'm like, did no one offer this kid?
I mean, is East Peoria on the schedule this year? Am I not? Is East Peoria and Canton on the schedule?
It doesn't matter. I mean, they're not the only teams that a Morton would play.
All right, fair enough. So Moving
Morton was
on.
one of the better teams in the area last year.
You love the roster top to bottom. Wardle could just draw the starting five out of a hat.
Oh, no. Don't get me wrong. That's what I warned you about. I said, don't take me wrong on this.
I'm not. I know what you're saying.
We saw lineups
what you're
just
saying
don't
is
work.
What you're saying
Wednesday.
what you're saying is that we've got a roster full of guys that really care, that are all bought in, and that are rowing the boat in the same direction. Just pull out all the cliches, but they're going to be a group of guys, I think, that we're going to have a lot of fun watching this season. And I don't think we're ever going to have to worry about these guys being connected and playing as a unit. That's kind of one of those things that just seems like a given with this group. And that's not something that most teams can say. I mean, that's not something that, and it's not something we should be taken for granted by us as fans either. So, looking forward to SEMO Monday night. Hopefully we get a good crowd. We'll see. I hope at some point in time things start to shift where the group of folks that don't come out until conference, Valley season starts. Hopefully those people come around and get out to the game and enjoy some of these non-conference games. This team deserves your support for sure. And it's just great, man. I love the little chat going on X that we have, that, we got about 20 of us that are in there and going back and forth. And it's just a group of people, man, that just love Bradley basketball. And the group of people in the Peoria area and whatever across the country that love Bradley basketball is a massive group.
We're playing San Francisco. They're 10 spots ahead of us. Well, not quite.
Yeah, but it's a game that, that's a good game.
That's going to be
a quality opponent.
Come out, let's fill the arena. That's going to be a very, very good game.
Quality opponent coming to town. And so lots to look forward to this season. Really appreciate you guys sticking with us through the internet issues. Hopefully, I know now even it's still choppy. Apologize for that. Hopefully we'll get it straightened out before next time. It might be this new setup we got with me and Dad on separate feeds, and maybe that's not helping. But we'll see what we can do to improve it before we go at it again. Hopefully we can get back with you before the Washington State game and talk about our victory over SEMO, and looking forward to our trip out to Pullman. And other than that, man, really excited that Bradley basketball is back. Really excited to be joining you guys for Braves Talk. Pumped. Appreciate all the participation and support. It's great. We just love doing this, man. Love talking Bradley basketball. Yep. And
hey, if you see us at the arena on Monday night, hey, don't hesitate to say hi.
OG will be signing autographs behind section 122 or 122A. Whatever is that word? Is that where we sit?
No,
is it
221A?
221A up in the corner there.
Got the can on one side and
the cheap
bar
seats
on the other of the entrance.
But yeah. Anyhow, looking forward to seeing you guys out this season, and hopefully we can plug a few of you guys in here along the way to kind of come on and chat with us about the Braves as we go. So a few housekeeping things as we close things out. You can find us on X at Iceman and Coach. Obviously TikTok, I&C Sports, where you'll be able to find Braves Talk content, and of course Iceman and Coach content and Fire Footwear content from Matty Ice. We are on Apple and Spotify for audio. Please rate, review, share this on YouTube, share the YouTube link to your friends on social media, like, subscribe, click the notification bell, all those fun things everybody says all the time. Honestly, man, appreciate you guys showing up. And Dad, you got anything to add before we get out of here?
Nope, I think I'm good. All
right.
Can't wait till Monday.
All right, we'll see you on Monday night. Go Braves. I don't have any outro music because Matt's got all that stuff, so we're just going to cut it off here. Go Braves, everybody. Have a good night.
The opinions and viewpoints expressed on I&C Sports are those of Matt Freites, Brad Powell, and their guests, and not necessarily those of the Matty Ice Media Network. I&C Sports is exclusively owned by Matt Freites and Brad Powell and is brought to you by the Matty Ice Media Network.